Hi, everyone. Oh, is this on? Okay.
Yeah, it's on.
Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone out to City Council policy meeting today. I'd like to do a real quick roll call. We have Councilman Podeska, we have Councilman Wilden, Councilman, there we go, now you can hear me a little bit better. Myself, Michael McComber, Mayor Pro Temp. The mayor is at another meeting at this time, won't be able to attend. And then Councilwoman Barch. I've asked Councilwoman Barch if she would give the invocation of reverence, and then for the Pledge of Allegiance, we have Mason from Troop 795 who will lead us in that. Thank you.
Our dearest Father who art in heaven, we are grateful to be gathered as residents of this beautiful city this night. We ask that as we discuss various developments and items on our agenda, that we might have clear heads and that we might be able to do what is best for the residents as a whole in this city. We ask that we might be able to bring to recollection all of the knowledge that we have, that we might be able to share that information with each other. And we say this in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Please rise. Will the audience please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you, Mason. 6:05. So. At this time, we have the distinct honor to be introduced to this year's 2008 Miss Saratoga Springs royalty. I had the opportunity to MC the event, and I could not have been more impressed with all 7 of the ladies that were participating. It was seriously an amazing group of girls. I don't even know how you guys picked who was going to be Miss Congeniality and how the directors picked who they were going to get their awards. I can't imagine this level of stress, but it also says a lot about the 3 of you. I think 2 are here, but the 2 of you, because it was such a steep competition, so congratulations. And I'll turn the time over to Darcy to do a quick introduction.
Good evening. I am Darcy Williams, the Assistant Civic Events Coordinator for Saratoga Springs. And yes, Saturday night was our 9th Miss Saratoga Springs pageant. We are super excited. We had 7 wonderful ladies, and we have a wonderful royalty of 3 now. Our new queen is Madeline Lamson. She's currently a junior at Westlake High School. Our first attendant is Abigail Smith, who is not here tonight. She's studying at the University of Utah and had a mandatory class. And then our second attendant is Chloe Pellegrini. And I'm going to briefly just tell you about their service projects, which we're looking forward to, and then I'll let you ask them questions or let them comment quickly. Madeline is going to be hosting an art program with the library this summer, teaching art for free to kids in the community and working with our library director to do that. Abigail is going to continue the service project she did last year as our second attendant, which is making blankets for our Victims Advocate Service. She made a number of blankets that were given to 25, I think, yes, given to them last year to hand out to kids in situations, traumatic situations when they're removed from the home. And Chloe is going to be working with our Civic Events Committee to increase activities for special needs residents in our at our events. Currently we have a special needs area at Easter egg hunt, but that's the only one. So she's going to be doing more at Splash and the Fall Festival. So I will let Madeline just make a comment.
Hi, I'm so honored to be Miss Saratoga Springs this year. I'm really excited to see what I can do for the community and to inspire young children to have a love for art.
I was impressed with her talent. If you weren't there, those of you who were, was basically speed art, and she had this board. I did steal it, so I do have it. It's already in my office. But she was painting super fast, and it was really cute. You did a great job with it, and just like a lot of personality. And then at the very end, she turns it upside down, and it was Elvis. So it was very cool. I think it caught everyone off guard, so it was a lot of fun to have that. And so obviously it shows your love of art, and then as part of the library, having that art option, I think is fantastic. We also have our Saratoga Springs Arts Committee Council. It probably wouldn't hurt to at least introduce her to them and Chalk the Walk, maybe a little bit bigger role that we haven't always had. Miss Saratoga Springs is at the Chalk the Walk, but where that's the art side of Splash, that would be wonderful to have you be a part of that and inspire all those young kids who are putting everything they have into the little chalk drawings. It's so cute. They're so determined, and I think that would be awesome if we could do that. But
I actually competed in that last year.
Oh, did you?
Fun.
Yeah, so that's great. So thank you. Any questions or comments from?
No, I was able to attend. I took my 6-year-old daughter on a daddy-daughter date, and she was very impressed with everyone. And the only question is, if we gave you 5 minutes, could you do a speed portrait of Councilman McConville? But all the towns, I don't mean to exclude.
You can make me just look like Elvis. I'm just kidding.
No, you all did a very good job. My daughter was inspired and impressed, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
we just want to say thank you for your continued support of our pageant each year.
And before you step down, Darcy, we have a little something. A lot of people don't know, but Darcy has really volunteered. Of the 9, she's done 8, only 1 because her daughter was in it. She actually wasn't able to, but you were very much involved just with helping your daughter. The Miss Saratoga Springs pageant has brought so much recognition to our city. We've had many other cities comment with our floats, with our princesses and our queens over the years, and really a lot of that has to do with Darcy and her team of volunteers, but we wanted to thank you, and we have a little something for you.
Thank you. Oh, sweet. Oh.
Thank you very much. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
I've had the honor of emceeing that event, I think 6 or 7 of the 9 times, and it's actually one of the things I do look forward to, just being part of something that's so well done and well put together. I also like the record now to show that Councilman Porter is here. Welcome. So the next item on the agenda is public input. I do want to point out one thing real quickly. If you're here for the Fairway Townhome Site Plan and Preliminary Plat, we are going to actually open up for public input on that item. And so if you're here to talk about Fairway, please do not get up right now. I will open it up, and then that will be a way it will be associated with the line item in the minutes, and it will also increase transparency. Now, if you're here for any other reason, any other item that's on the agenda or not, we now open up for public input. We do ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes, and we try to ask that we don't repeat comments. If someone says something and you're going to say the same thing, either say something differently, or you can come up, give your name and address, and say ditto if you want, for the record. But when you do come up to the podium, if you state your name, first and last, and your address for the record, we'll now open up for public input.
My name is Stephen Lewis. I live at 1497 South Cottonwood Lane. I'm here to speak with the council about delinquencies on utility billings, delinquency fees, the $15 fee that's charged anytime, I guess, the way it's been explained to me, that you're more than 60 days past due. I've accrued 4 of those, and I've been speaking with Marquette Schwartz about why those happen and where they come from, and if there's any way they could be waived. She said that the ability to do that is beyond her, and that I need to speak with City Council about that. She told me that just recently that the billing cycle, well, the meters are read on the 25th of each month, so the billing cycle goes from the 25th to the 25th. But the utility bills say bill date from the 31st to the 1st, or the 1st to the 31st. So anytime a resident thinks that they're not 60 days past due because it's not yet the end of the month, according to the city, according to Marquette, if they're past the 25th of the month, they are already past due. Well, I don't think that's fair to the city residents because it's not indicated anywhere on the utility billing. She tells me it is in the city notes somewhere if you go online, but I think it ought to be clearly stated on the utility billing if the city's going to hold us liable to that. And since it hasn't, I would respectfully request that the city can consider waiving the $460 charges that I accrued. I have brought my account to a zero balance, by the way.
So typically, we do not respond in public input, but this is a unique circumstance. I think I can speak. I saw a lot of nodding as you were talking. So I just ask that the staff work with the resident and with Marquette. And one, we need to fix the bill that it does state. And if we are really doing it from the 25th to the 25th, I think Stephen deserves some leniency right now, in my opinion, because it's not been stated on the bill. And I know that our website, maybe it's on there somewhere in one of our ordinances, but as we all know, that can get a little bit convoluted. And so work with you to determine what would be the best, and then if you need to reach back out to us as a council, we can determine, like if they determine that not all the fees or half the fees or whatever, just come back to the council with a recommendation on what we'd like to do from going forward. So I've directed staff to work with you and then come back with a recommendation to us so that we can take care of it from there.
Who should I follow up with?
Owen is not here right now, but I would probably...
We'll have utility billing.
Utility, yeah. So
I'll be asking for some clarification on that a little bit later from you all.
Okay. I think that if on the bill, it doesn't hurt to have extra clarification. I've actually just gone on auto payment, but I've heard from others that it can be a little bit confusing. So, thank you.
So, sorry, just for clarification again, who should I follow up with? Dave? Okay. All right, I'll take your name down so I have a name. Thanks.
Oh, Owen's over there. I was like, Owen's there, but not there. Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we have a fancy new clock now so that I don't have to sit here and hit. Well, actually, Mayor Miller won't have to hit in the future. We just really want to keep things moving along for all people involved. We all have personal lives, and it's nice if we don't have to be here till 11 o'clock at night. So, all right. Anyone else for public input that's other than the Fairway Townhomes?
Hi, Chris Karn, 191 East Cameron. I'm probably one of 2 or 3 people who attend every meeting virtually. I know that I communicate with several of you during those meetings, but I wanted to remind you and ask staff to remind the Planning Commission to please use microphones. And during the Planning Commission meetings, you don't show what's on these screens like you do during city council meetings. And that would be very helpful. If when the items that are being discussed can be put on the YouTube feed on what you're looking at in the room and not just during the city council meetings. Because that makes me go sit at my computer and download the packet and look at it while they're discussing. And I don't want to do that because I'm usually doing dishes or something with the kids.
The 400-page packet doesn't download
very easily, yeah. So that's just what I'd like to do for open forum, just to remind you to please use microphones, make it easier to hear. And during the Planning Commission meetings, please show on the YouTube feed what's being discussed. Thank you.
So our viewership is down 33%.
If we could just make a note of that for the future, thank you.
So we don't have someone at Planning Commission meetings that does that. That's typically done by David Johnson. And so we would be...
If we could train someone or have somebody help with that, I think transparency, and if we're going to do the live feed, we need to have some way for people to see what's being talked about, or not do the live feed. It doesn't make sense to have it if it's...
Yeah, it's certainly something we can look at, but it would require additional staff.
Okay. All right. Anyone else for public input? I'll now close the public input. So for reports, The mayor did not give me any reports, but have there been any meetings that you attend, Councilman Barch, with the mayor on some things? Is there any updates that you can help on his behalf?
Yeah, so I attended the MAG meeting, and we actually received an additional $3.8 million, I believe it was, in funding for the Redwood Road widening. The right-of-way purchase has gotten more expensive since they originally set the amount. So it's still going ahead as planned, and they were able to get those funds. We were able to get those funds appropriated.
So the Mountain Land Association of Governments is the county group of organization of all the cities, municipalities, and Councilman Barch represented the mayor at that meeting, and that's where, so that's county funds, right? And that's where we were able to get that money, because obviously, as we all know, if you're at all keeping track, your homes are worth more. It's a good thing.
County
but
funds and also all of our gas tax money is reappropriated through MAG.
And so that's, that kind of money will help pay for many projects within our city, and that's great news to hear that we're not going to be held up on the widening of Redwood Road as a result of the increased property values. Thank you. Any other updates?
Had two additional ones, just kind of follow-ups. We talked about a couple of different code changes before. One of them we'll talk about later tonight, but and that would be an intent to clarify the intent of the sloped roofs, and obviously we'll get into that more later, but just get that done. And then a follow-up, we talked about a code change to look at making sure that we had foresight architecture on houses that backed on arterials and major collectors and things like that. It's just find out where we were on that. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Do we anticipate something in the next month or two, or?
Yeah, I've got a large group of code changes. A lot of them are cleanups, but we'll add some others there to bring you a big group of changes.
Okay. Great, thank you. No? Anything else?
Just Councilwoman Barch and I, along with our city manager, Mark Christensen, attend the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Mark Christensen has been attending an awful lot of meetings, so appreciate what he's been doing there. He said it's ruined his lunch hour. Yeah, ruined his lunch hour, but now he can go back to his daily lunch with our attorney, Kevin. But just a shout out, there was a particular concerning bill that our House Rep Jefferson Moss sided with us. He made the right decision, and that bill was not put to bed, but
defeated.
Defeated. And so appreciate him supporting our city. He does that regularly, but that was a particularly concerning one. So
it just basically was a little bit more intrusion from the state telling us as a city what we should and shouldn't do, and we believe that here at Saratoga Springs we believe that we know what's best for us, and that maybe what's best for Salt Lake or South Jordan or Sandy or an Ogden might not be equivalent to us, and we didn't want to be forced to do what they do. We think that we want to keep it as close to the residents as possible, to give a little background, and so we were happy to hear that Representative Moss did do that, so thank you. And there's been so many other bills and things, and I appreciate, Mark, you attending those. I know Councilman Barch has been up there quite a bit, and you get to walk across the street a lot.
it's a hike up to the Capitol.
It's up the hill. Councilman Wilden works in Salt Lake City, so it's great to have that resource up there for these, and it helps also having council representatives here in the city when during the day as well. So I think we've got a good mix right now. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I just had one item. I just wanted to again thank the police department, the awards luncheon that we all attended there, and it's fun to see the whole department as well as see those that have risen to the top during this phase, and just love our department and how strong we are. So thank you.
I'm sorry that I did miss that. I was out of town. It's one of those events I really try to make. It's great to be able to recognize those people who put themselves between us and the not so pretty parts of society. So I really appreciate that and all that they do. Any other from staff? I know Mark just stepped out. Do we have anything, any updates or any? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. At this time, we'll now do business item number 1, Fairway Townhome Site Plan and Preliminary Plat, Scott Thorson, CRR Engineering Applicant, 110 East Fairway Boulevard. We'll go ahead and do the presentation, and then we will open it up for public input, and then we will allow the developer, if he wants to have any comments as well at the same time. The developer is welcome to come up and sit in the chair at this time too if they prefer.
I'm not sure they're here. Oh, there we go, in the back.
So
In the back.
typically when we have an item, that's what the table and chairs are here for.
Okay, so just for the audience's benefit, I'm Nora Shepard. I'm a senior planner here at Saratoga Springs. And this is a request for site plan approval and preliminary plat approval for Fairway Townhomes, which is located in the Saratoga Springs development. It was originally part of the Saratoga Springs PUD in 2000, was approved in 2000, and the land use designation at that time was high-density residential, and it was known as Plat 22. And the city of, eventually officially amended our zoning ordinance and adopted new zones. And when we did that, the MF10 was applied to this parcel. So the property has essentially been zoned or designated as a multifamily parcel since about 2000. The general plan indicates that it should be single family, medium density residential, and then as I mentioned, the zoning is MF10, which is 10 units per acre. Based upon the parcel size, that would be about 57 units. What's proposed is 55 units right now, and there is a small area of a wetland area that they are excluding development from. The total area is 5.52 acres. It's 9.96 units per acre. Go ahead. They've gone through all of the required development parameters, and I'm not going to go through those. They're all outlined in the staff report. They are proposing a pretty complete open space and amenity plans, which include 3 areas for park-type activities. We are requiring that they put a net up in one of the locations because it's sort of, it would be subject to errant golf balls, so they have agreed to do that. Yeah. Anyway, so they are proposing extensive landscaping and open space amenities. The most controversial thing has been discussion of the architecture. And just so you're aware, it has received approval from the Saratoga Springs Architectural Review Committee, and I think that letter, I think I put it in the slide presentation, but we did receive that and we got a letter to that effect. The controversy, and the Planning Commission talked about this at some length, and I included a copy of the minutes and also a copy of the recommendation. They did end up forwarding a positive recommendation to you, but they wanted us to look in a little bit more to the definition of slope and pitch. And so in your staff report, I did some research. There's nothing in there that's really conclusive. And our existing code, if you want to go, just go through those really quickly, all the elevations. There's a letter from the Homeowners Association. So this is the definition of, this is what's in our existing architectural guidelines in our zoning code or zoning ordinance. And it talks about sloped roofs, and this is for multifamily and non-residential development. Sloped roofs providing articulation and variations in order to break up the massiveness of the roof. Flat roofs shall be screened with parapets. There is no rooftop equipment proposed. And it says flat roofs with 0 pitch are not permitted for 2-family, 3-family, and multifamily dwellings. So that therein lies the question that the Planning Commission is struggling with, and the staff struggled with as well. These roofs are, in essence, they're pretty flat, but they don't have 0 pitch. They do have pitch, and that pitch is necessary to provide for drainage. It won't really be visible from the street or anywhere else. It will appear as though it's a flat roof, but it's not technically 0 pitch. And that's really the issue for discussion before the City Council tonight. And we wrote some language in the staff report that talked about, the plain language of the code, and what it says, and if that's not conclusive enough, then, it's up to you to kind of interpret what the intent is. And I've drafted a finding for approval that addresses this, and a finding for denial, which also addresses the pitch. So that's the primary issue for discussion. I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but...
Before we get into, do you want to do the questions, or do you want to have the public, it's not public, open for a public forum, but it's a public input? Do you guys want,
One other item, I'm sorry. In other areas, the design actually fits within our architectural guidelines. It requires three kinds of materials, 3 color schemes, articulation in the facades, and those items, particular types of fencing, and those items all comply.
Yeah, as stated in the report, right?
Yes.
So, thank you. So, council, do you want to have the public input first, or do you want to give comments first? Okay. Oh, thank you. We'll go ahead and open it up for public input. We still are going to have the same rules if we can keep it to 3 minutes and try and avoid repetitive comments. Thank you. And state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Sue Chappelle. I live in Saratoga Springs, and I live in the Lakeside HOA area, 181 Cottage Cove. And I really concur with Nora about the concern of the pitch of the roofs. I'm a realtor. I hear all the buzz from every homeowner. Every homeowner seems to think that I have all the answers to everything. And it's really interesting. What do you know about this? There has been so much buzz and concern about these buildings, the architecture of it, the pitch of the roof, the way they look. We're not opposed to multi-units. We know that that's going to happen. We read the CC&Rs, that's okay. But it's the style and the way they look. The other thing is we're really concerned about the parking issue. Nora's been really great because I've been requesting information from her. And it's my understanding that there are 15 visitor stalls for the 55-unit facility. What concerns me about that is I have sold properties up in Talon's townhomes, and they have the same situation where they have a lot of problems with the parking situation. And they have got cars all over, and my understanding is when we address this, and we've talked to the HOA about it, is there are parking restrictions that exist along Fairway Drive. But the question is, who is going to enforce them to not park there? Because nothing's being done at the Talon townhomes at all. They're overflowing with additional cars parked all around, and it's a big problem. So we've got a lot of concerned people. We do not want to see cars parked up and down Fairway, even though, you could paint a red line, you could state it. I'm wondering if there should be some kind of amendment or something that should be really emphasized about what the parking situation is. Those people, I believe, who are going to purchase those townhomes are going to find it very restricted to only have 15 stalls for that many units. So we're really concerned about that. And again, we are definitely concerned. I've read the CC&Rs about the pitch requirement of the roofs. We've got a beautiful community. And in my opinion, nothing looks like this development that's coming in. And I have so many homeowners who are very, very concerned about it. And I am also with those people. And so we wanted to state our feelings and make you aware of how we feel. Okay.
Wait.
A point of clarification, there are 15 visitor parking spaces. Each unit has a 2-car garage and a driveway that can hold 2 cars. So in essence, it's tandem parking, but there are 4 spaces per unit which are designed into the project.
But we don't count those. we've never counted those for required parking.
I understand.
Okay.
But from a practical standpoint.
Right. But clarification as far as that goes, so the number of the 15 actually meets our visitor, the 2.5 per
Yes.
unit visitor, right?
Yeah. And they do have adequate enough driveways so they can park in the driveways as well, just a heads up.
But not counting the driveway, we still are meeting the code for parking, okay?
Chris Karn, 191 East Cameron. Just as a point of clarity, I'm the president of the HOA, about 1,000 homes in that area.
The master HOA.
The master HOA, yeah. And I've talked to the developer of this project a few times about this project, and I'm not opposed. This is in my backyard also. Literally, it's across the fairway from my house, so I've interest here. The master HOA does not currently have a parking restriction on Fairway, but if that does become a problem, we will paint the curbs red and tow all the cars there. And we don't want to get in that situation. And not to repeat what Sue said, I do have concern about the parking because garages, I know, are not parking, they're storage. I've got a 3-car garage that I can put 2 cars in because I've got bikes and everything else, and I'm sure these people will as well. I do want to read briefly, and I want to also clarify when staff says that there's a letter of approval from the Homeowners Association. That is from the Architectural Control Committee, not from the Homeowners Association. The Architectural Control Committee and the HOA are 2 separate entities. SSD is not SSOA. SSD is the developer who created the community.
Sorry, Chris, are you saying that the developer approved his own?
Yes.
Development?
The developer is the Architectural Control Committee. And if I read from our CC&R's recorded document, they state that extraordinary stylized or unique building shapes or styles such as geodesic domes, A-frames, or cubic block homes are prohibited. So our CC&Rs state they're prohibited. And again, I'm not opposed to this project. I understand the density. I understood it was approved a long time ago. But the style does not necessarily match the community. And if the council approves it, and I know the planning commission approved, I know that there's a letter from the ACC approving it, but there is a slight conflict of interest with the ACC approving their own project, in my opinion. Again, parking is an issue, and I also have a concern with where they're going to push snow. This is going to be a sub-association. I don't want them to have no place to push snow and push it out onto my streets that I have to maintain. So that's all. Thank you.
Am I allowed to get up again?
You're really not, but if you can keep it to 15 seconds, that'd be fine.
15 seconds. I just forgot to say 2 things. The Architectural Committee, when Chris pointed that out, is 1 person, and that person is responsible for this part of this development. So why don't we have more people on architectural design? I don't know if that's a volunteer thing, but...
It's the HOA. You can make that happen, yeah.
Okay, that's one thing. And then the other thing is, I just have to say that I have seen and sold those townhomes in Talons, and those garages can fit usually 1 car. I don't see them as a 2-car garage, but anyway.
But we'll talk about it. Okay, thank you. At this time, are there any other comments? I do think it's important to note that I have personally received many emails and phone calls. I'm not sure if the council has as well. We're concerned about this. The reason why I probably received more than maybe others is full transparency. I do live in this neighborhood. I don't live by this, but my dad does. My dad I think he lives maybe like across the street, really. So it's not far at all from where you live, and he backs on, and he would actually have visibility into this. He's quite old and doesn't get around as much, but he expressed his concerns to me as well. So I think that's important to be transparent there. Are there anybody else here that would like to give comment? Okay, I'm not going to close it because it's not a public hearing, but we'll now move on to the council, and then we'll give you a chance, unless you'd like to just talk now, or would you rather talk now or after the council? We'll leave it to you. Wait until after. Okay, get all the information and then respond. That's smart. I think that's a smart approach. Anyone want to go first? Okay, Councilman Bartsch.
Okay, so couple of things site plan wise first. Again, I don't have a problem with the project as a whole. I do have a couple of questions for you. The first one would be, well, let me start by saying I like that you have the option to have elevators in some of your units. That's pretty neat because that gives a whole group that wouldn't normally be able to live in that kind of a unit the ability to do that. So that's pretty neat. That being said, I had a clarification question on one of your playgrounds. On one of the playgrounds, it says, what does it say? Or mulch or soft surface or sandbox. Okay, so first of all, please don't do a litter box, because that's what it'll turn into, right? But one of the things I was thinking of is, and I don't know if this is what you were meaning by that, but the surface that you were talking about, are you talking about like the squishy rubberized surface that the kids can roll onto or adults can roll onto with their wheelchairs? That's basically a solid surface, but it's squishy, so it's still safe?
Should I say my name first?
Yes, please. Name and, yes, position. How's that? Yeah, it's on. It's on.
Scott Thorson with CIR Engineering, 3032 South, 1030 West, Salt Lake City, Utah. So, civil engineer here, architects here. The one person that's not is the landscape architect.
Okay.
But I don't think that it was intended to be the soft rubber.
Okay. I was going to say, if you could, that would be phenomenal, especially where you're kind of catering to those with disabilities already, whether that be, you know, parents or grandparents or the actual kids themselves, because then they could actually get in and use those and help their kids or grandkids. So it's kind of a nice idea if, you know, one of those areas contained that kind of material. So, but not a requirement. But not a requirement. But please don't do sand. That's just a bad idea. Okay.
I'll write that down.
And the geese will enjoy it too. Yeah.
And our mountain lions.
And our mountain lions, yeah. Okay, our giant kitties. So, so that being said, from what I could tell, and it was a little bit confusing, I saw marks in there saying you had 25-foot driveways, but it wasn't necessarily to the shortest point on the driveway. So is that what you're looking for, is a 25-foot long driveway so you have plenty of room to park the car without hanging over the sidewalk?
That's correct.
Excellent. Okay. So architecture. My first inclination was to say, although I personally hate this architecture and find it ugly, my personal opinion doesn't count. However, the roof slope does. However, with the CC&Rs being red, you don't actually fit your HOA's CC&Rs. So where before I was saying go back and figure out how to do the roof line, if you want to keep that architecture, so be it. Now I'm thinking that you can't even keep that architecture. So that seems very problematic to me. My concern on the roof slope is that our intent was twofold. Our intent was to have housing have similar, now they don't have to be the same. We have other areas that have lower sloped roof lines, but nonetheless an actual sloped roof line and not have it look like storage containers and commercial areas. So that being said, you say it's not flat, but I've done enough flat work growing up that when you do a patio out in your backyard, you don't do a zero slope, you do a 1/4 inch off so that it drains off. What you're doing is strictly for drainage. It has nothing to do with slope at all, and so I don't think it follows the intent of what we were doing with our code. That being said, I gave direction a little, maybe not quite as clearly, but I will now to staff. We need to get that clarified because we have that intent, but we need to make sure that it's clear so this kind of thing doesn't happen in the future. So it's not even a problem to start with. Also, just to show you that that was our intent, we actually have 2 projects in the city that we actually had them also change their roof lines. One was the Harvest Village project up north, and the other one was immediately across the road, the Talons Cove townhomes. They came in with the flat roofs to start, and we went, So that, again, just clarifies our intent as a council. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. The rest of the project I'm fine with. I did also have one more piece of clarification. On one of the pictures you showed, on one of the exhibits, you showed a fence in between the backyards, kind of breaking up, you know, the personal space, the semi-personal space, whatever you want to call it. What is that fencing material? It was a little ambiguous.
See if I can answer your question. While I'm looking for it, my name is Gerald Reynolds. I work at AE Irby Architects and Engineers. Asked to come tonight to represent.
Move the microphone a little more.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
I'm not sure, could you point me to where that was?
One of the images that was actually in the slideshow presentation also, Dave, if you want to go back.
And we need to move the microphone in front of him so that people can hear. And it's mainly for the people online.
That one right there on that bottom, yeah. So at the bottom right picture there, you can see that fencing there. And there's no place that calls out what it is. There's no, it looks like a wall, is it? But it said that was metal. Is that solid sheet metal? What is that?
At this point, I'm unclear what that material would be.
So my concern is, I thought that I had read someplace in there that that was metal, but it didn't say what. So my concern is if that's a big piece of sheet metal, which might fit this particular architecture, that would be incredibly hot as the sun bakes it.
Yeah, I don't think that's the intent. I think the metal, the iron rot type stuff is the perimeter fencing. Yeah, I don't think that it was applying to this.
Okay, so that would be one of those things that obviously staff, as they're going through and getting ready for the rest of the process, would need to have clarification on what that material would be. Also, we don't have, I understood the Planning Commission saw materials, and I was just kind of curious what those, yeah. Anyway, I was just curious, because you do have a differentiation in materials, but.
Well, you're gathering that too. Just a point when not to jump in, but I have a little bit of knowledge about the CCNRs in this HOA. A solid fence wouldn't be allowed either. It has to be semi-private when it's backing on the golf course or near the golf course. So that's part of the CCNRs. So let's make sure as we work with them on the fencing that also meets the CCNRs. Even though the CCNRs are their own governing body, as a council we want to, and we always have supported and help defend CCNRs. We've done that consistently in all of the HOAs throughout the city.
I looked at the spec.
Yeah.
I don't remember off the top of my head what that fence type is.
Okay.
But it's in the construction drawing.
I was just concerned that we might have some burn issues if, little kids walked up against a hot metal plate.
Well, it can't even be vinyl semi-private. It has to be wrought iron if it's with the golf course. That's how the CCNRs are written.
It is, but
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head.
All right, thank you.
So those are all my basic comments and questions, and we'll see what the rest of the council says.
Just pass it around.
Play Vanna.
That's good. I can, that's right.
What is?
Oh, I'm tall.
Yeah, you're tall. I'm not that tall.
That's cement.
So.
They don't.
I was going to say, so those don't actually, they don't label the fence, no. So those don't actually fit, I mean, there's no red on that picture anyplace. I'm confused.
The picture that we're looking at doesn't have any red. So where's the red?
Yeah.
So it'd be the brown portion would either be
So-
brown or red. That's how I understand it.
The bottom half would be either. Bottom half would be red or gray. Is the various buildings would be different? Is that what you're showing the?
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So this is representing just a sampling, not all the color schemes. Okay, thank you. Councilman Barch?
That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilman Porter?
Okay. I would echo Councilwoman Barch's comments about the sand. And originally when I was looking at this, I guess I didn't zoom in far enough, but originally I had a lot of concern about this, what's labeled as a proposed playground area, but is actually a pavilion. So at first I was like, I realize you're going to shield it and have a fence or netting or whatever, but I was putting a playground there seemed like a poor choice, and I guess you guys thought the same thing. So
it's called dodgeball.
I feel better knowing it's a pavilion with a roof that'll protect people's heads. So as far as the architecture, I understand the concerns. My personal opinion is, I guess, quite frankly, irrelevant because it either meets code or it doesn't as far as architecture is concerned. The roof, I understand what Councilwoman Bartsch is saying. I do agree that we need to clarify that code very much. We need to have a discussion, make sure that it's clear. I do see technically it has pitch or slope to it. However, something which was brought up by Mr. Karn, the fact that this doesn't meet the CC&Rs is really, that's very troublesome. And I very much agree, I'm always, sometimes we have disagreements about, I'm probably the most loosey-goosey as far as letting people do what they want with their property sometimes. But I've always said the HOA, a lot of this stuff is what the HOA should be dealing with. The HOA should be regulating architecture. The city should be regulating public safety. In this case, the HOA is regulating architecture, and it seems like you've found a loophole to get around that. Kevin, I'm looking for some legal guidance, I guess, because we can't enforce CC&Rs.
No, you can't. So the CC&Rs, those are private covenants, and that really is between the developer and the HOA. As long as they meet our code, we have to allow them to proceed. Now, the HOA has an option legally as far as stopping the development and these buildings from going in. And the developer would just have to look at that and analyze is it really worth that risk. But as far as the city is concerned, we don't have a requirement in our code that they meet CC&Rs.
So Kevin, this is one of the things that I've actually asked for a whole bunch of times, and I know that we've actually, other cities, let me phrase that. Other cities do this all the time, where they require as part of their process to receive a letter from the HOA saying that, yes, it's been reviewed by the HOA and the ACC board, and both have approved of the general architecture that goes along with it, and that's part of their process. And I've asked for this a couple of times, and so if that's something we need to actually put in our code, then let's get it done so we can do it and have it
part of the process.
Because here's the problem. As a city, we've approved this HOA, right? And we've approved them being functional, and yet we're tying their hands and making it much more difficult for them. Instead of being able to stop it on paper beforehand, they then have to go through, and the developer has to spend a lot more money because they go through the whole process and they're hopefully going to be building or whatever else, instead of being able to talk to the HOA and get that worked out beforehand.
Well, first of all, the building department has been asking for that letter from the HOA. And that mostly is a courtesy to the HOA. It's not a requirement, but it is a courtesy to make sure that we don't set the developer up for failure, basically. And on the other issue, as far as us enforcing private regulations and covenants, I think we should have a side discussion about that.
Okay.
There's certainly a lot of pros, as you mentioned, but there's a lot of cons too, where you start getting into things like garbage cans and yards and litter and any number of things that HOAs and their rules that they have that may not mesh with our code. It's hard to find a one-size-fits-all situation.
Well, and I get that, and let's have another conversation later, and I get that for the most part, but when you're talking about the construction of a new part of the development, I think that it becomes a little bit different. So let's definitely have another conversation about that in a closed session or offline, or however you think we need to best.
And if I can ask a point of clarification, I think it will help you as well, is when there's some ambiguity, I've been doing this for a few years, the city council, we still have, and if you can maybe help us understand a little bit and maybe get it on the record too, when we have to look at the intent, because we're all human, And trust me that we have made a lot of changes to our code in the 8 years I've been on the council because there are flaws and loopholes and things that get missed. So what is the purpose of intent from a city council when there is some ambiguity in this case?
Well, that's kind of a complicated question, and I probably don't have a great answer for you, but usually the intent is in the intent section of the code, which is not binding. So if there's an ambiguity, yeah, you do look at legislative intent.
So you can actually.
But that is something that's subjective and open for debate about what the legislative intent was. In this case, what was the purpose of that? It would have been helpful to have some diagrams showing what we meant by pitch and zero pitch to show flat roofs that for all intents and purposes appear to be flat.
When I read it though, I see also B giving detail of what we are trying to do with pitch, trying to make diversity and change and breaking up. So I think there was, and I actually called 2 of the council members who were on the council at the time, and I'm just curious if that matters at all. I asked them what they believe that what they were doing when they did that.
No, when you look at legislative intent, it's never what was the subject, what was going on in the mind of that member of the legislative body.
At the time.
It's always the discussion that happened in the meeting by the body.
Okay.
So we'd have to go back and look at the audio recordings when that was adopted, see what the council discussed about that particular requirement. And that's assuming that there isn't any discussion in the code, which in this case, it doesn't appear that there is any. So you would look at that discussion.
We have some problems because we know we don't have the recordings back from 2000, because we had a whole problem with another part of this development. We don't have those recordings.
Well, this particular code requirement was, I think, put in place just a few years ago.
2000 is when they got their
zero pitch.
But the zero pitch was
the
more
zero
recent.
pitch.
Yeah, that was fairly recent.
Okay.
Yeah, it was last year before last, year before last. And I actually went through and tried to look at the minutes and dig through them. I didn't look at the recordings. And it was this section of the code, along with many other sections of the code, they all went through at the same time. And I couldn't find anything in the minutes that specifically addressed this issue about what zero pitch means or what slope means. It may have been discussed, but
it wasn't actually, I don't think, discussed during the code portion of it. It was discussed when we were doing the different developments, Harvest Village and the Talons condos, or the Talons townhomes. That's when those were actually discussed, and it was then directed to staff to go back and change it.
Okay.
And then one final point, whenever there's, we've talked about this before, whenever there's a tie, it always goes to the developer, right? So if there's more than one reasonable interpretation of the code, we have to interpret it in favor of the property owner because of the fact that land use ordinances are in derogation of private property rights, and those are protected under the Constitution. So that's just, and I'm not saying that that's the case here, but your interpretation will be upheld by the court as long as there's substantial evidence on the record supporting your decision.
Okay. I think we've had some things outlined, yeah.
Yeah, substantial evidence is some credible factual support for your decision.
I mean, I think we have some things outlined, and before I'll entertain a motion at the time, we'll talk about some of those and get those detailed before we entertain the motion. I think that would be clear in this. And Councilman Porter, anything else this time?
Yeah.
You did go to the lawyer. I'm just saying.
I know.
He's just joking that I could never ask another question.
Shall we ask a question? 20 minutes later, I get the mic back. Okay. So I'm looking in here. What I'm assuming is Kevin's writing, since it's talking about in the staff report, under the examples of what's in the architecture dictionaries. It says the decision comes down to a legal interpretation of the code. The council should look first at the plain language of the statute to determine its meaning. If the language is ambiguous, the council could then look at the intent. So are we allowed to take into account if we believe it is unambiguous?
Well, like I said, there isn't any intent. There's not an intent section that discusses this particular requirement, so we'd have to go back and Nora's already looked at the written minutes. The written minutes are the official record, audio recording, we haven't compared that to see what the intent of the council was at that time.
That's,
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, that doesn't.
yeah, that wasn't what I was asking, but,
Sorry, what was, can you ask?
I'm just saying, we have to believe it's ambiguous before we can look at intent, or can we look at intent just because we have questions about this?
If it's unambiguous, you go with the plain
What
language
is-
of the code.
All right, I'm interested in hearing what the rest of the council has to say before I say.
I can come back to you if you have additional comments. Wilden?
Thank you. I'm not going to speak to the parking. We've already discussed that. It meets code. It is, that's pretty clear. You know, I'm going to step out of character a little bit. I don't usually say these type of things, but I'm a little bit disappointed that we're having something submitted that's clear violation of the CC&Rs. And I don't usually say those type of things, but I am disappointed. We want to work with developers that are working in good faith with the organizations they should be tied to. So I would highly encourage you to work with them, but that's not something I guess we can enforce. But just so you know, that is significantly disappointing, because the way the facts were presented to us was factual and it was misleading. I thought the HOA was full on board with this type of thing, and to hear that, it doesn't necessarily change the opinion that I have, but it changes how I kind of feel about the project. But just stepping back to the pitch and the slope, it is ambiguous because it talks about there needs to be a slope at the, I'm not sick, I'm not contagious at this point. Sorry, I just have this lingering cough. Dang it, now you're making me cough. Because it is ambiguous, because if you look at the order it goes, it talks about you need a slope and then zero pitch. And so to me it's ambiguous, and you look at the intent, I think 4 of the 5 council members that set that code are sitting here now, and which is us 4 to the left here, that we've clarified the intent by the actions we've taken on the previous developments who've come in with flat roofs, which we've made them change that, and to be generally consistent with other areas that are around them. So to me, that was our intent. We've set the precedent by making other developers follow that, and I think we need to do that here. And that's really what it hinges on, is we need to follow the intent of, and we've demonstrated that by what we've made other developers do, since it's ambiguous in the code there, where there's inherent conflict between, I pulled up the code here a minute ago, there's like 5 numbers, and if you look at the order, I'm not getting emotional, I promise. I'm trying to hold in a cough. Anyway, so that's where I'm at. I'm going to stop talking, because I'm about to lose my coughing. It doesn't help. Nothing helps.
Here's another one.
All right. Thank you.
Councilman Videska.
All right, yeah, there's information brought to light in this meeting that I wasn't aware of. You know, to Councilwoman Barch's comment about getting a letter of intent from the HOA, that was something that when I was HOA president for a large HOA down south in Saratoga Springs, we would do with our developers, send in that letter of intent with our support, because we're fully aware of what the project was coming in. And so that's something that's very important to me, to know that the neighborhoods are working together with the developers and are pleased with the products that are going in. And that's a little bit different, you know, with our HOA, our ARC manager is part of the HOA, and so learning about that dynamic there was interesting. Yeah, you know, looking in their CC&Rs, again, as a city, we don't have any, it's above and beyond our own code, but where it specifically says cubic block homes are prohibited, that's, yeah, it's just, it's unfortunate that it's gotten this far in the process without that part of their CC&Rs, master CC&Rs, I should say, are not being adhered to. enough has been said about the roof and the parking. And a side thing, with the naming of the street, is that still part of is that just part of the conditions of the report? Is that being taken care of?
It's been resolved.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I won't reiterate everything else that's been said, but yeah, I'm done.
Great, thank you. Anything else?
I had one more question. I guess this is more for the planning. I'm looking at from the code, 19-1605-2, roof treatment, where we discuss this. In A, it says sloped roofs shall provide articulation and variations. Does this roof provide any articulation or variation?
Some of them, the roof, well, if you look at this example, the one that's on the screen right now, there's enough facade variation in the front, the roof line steps back, and in some of them, the roof line steps up, but it's clearly not,
Dormers and...
stable.
Okay. I disagree with some of the council members as to how ambiguous whether or not it's sloped is. However, if it's sloped, you then have to abide by the code applying to sloped roofs. And the facade isn't the roof, so I'm not sure that you meet that or that requirement under 2A. So that's.
I think that reiterates what other people were saying as well, so thank you for that clarification, Councilman. Councilman Barch has requested additional comment.
So I was just going to say, before I heard the CCNR and the HOA issue on this, one of the things that I was going to suggest is you could actually still do your architecture the way you wanted if you just took it and, for example, from front to back actually sloped, and then you have the parapet put, 12 inches above like you're supposed to have. You could do that, and you could still have the same architecture and slope the whole roof line with the parapet up or whatever. But that being said, it doesn't
meet their CCNR.
It doesn't meet the CCNR. So that was kind of going to be my suggestion, is you could still do your same architecture, but I don't know if that's even possible now.
So really quickly, I'm in a unique role, Mayor's Pro Temp. I'm leading the discussion, but I'm also a council member, and I will be voting as a council member today. So I wanted to give my thoughts on this as well. For me, I'm definitely supporting everything that's been said. I wanted to give some kudos where kudos are due. The landscaping of this project, I think, is very well designed. I think it's been very well thought out. I appreciate the variation in foliage. I think that's also. And you sort of hinted at it a little bit at the beginning, so I don't want to say that no one did, but I just wanted to point out that there's some really great things here. I even think the use of the space, the amount of open space, all of those things are very well appreciated. And as a council member, it's always nice when people come in and they're not just trying to cram in everything. You could have fit more in here, but you're trying to create a product that will hopefully sell well. So I think that that's something to be said. I don't think it's any reason to, again, personal opinion of this, I personally wouldn't buy a cubism type structure for me personally. So I just have, but in terms of code, I like, and I've said this, so this is consistent for me for the last 8 years, and Councilman Barch probably has heard me say this many times, I like to make good neighbors and make good communities. I don't want the people who, and actually I think I said this on the Talons condos when we did the steep slope roof on that too. I don't want the people moving into here, moving into the community, having other people looking down on them or complaining to them because they really had nothing to do with it. They're coming in, buying a house, hoping that they're just going to move into a nice neighborhood. I like to create nice neighborhoods and nice communities. It's very concerning to me that you would find the loophole within the CCNRs to go to the Architectural Review Committee, but then not worry about the HOA. And I'm saying you, it's the collective you. We know it's not just you. You just happen to be the faces today. And so for me, I'm not going to approve this project today due to the fact that I do not believe it meets the architectural requirements And I know that for the CCNR, they have their own rules, but I'm doing it from another perspective. Something that we've often talked about is similarity. And so this is another product within a community. And we really work hard as a city council, and there's plenty of precedents here that we are very consistent that other communities that come in have similar architectural feel as the surrounding areas, and it doesn't become like an isolated island surrounding by a completely different set of architecture. And so the slope roof, I think that we've gone over that enough. I actually believe that I'm actually leading with you, Councilman, that well, I was just saying Councilman, I'm looking at you, I guess for the record, Porter. But that 2A has not been met. And regardless of what 2C says, I believe that 2A has not been met. And so I think that even on that grounds, let alone intent and all of that, I mean, I see where you were coming along with it and was hearing them too. So I actually think that we have some pretty strong standing there. And then in terms of when you're coming back, you could come back with this cubism with the slope to what Councilman Bartsch talked about. But if I don't have a letter from the HOA saying that it's okay and it meets the CCNRs, I'm probably going to push back again. And so it doesn't work to your best interest, I think, to fight this. And the HOA also, I can't speak for them, but they have no problem fighting for their rights. And they've known to do this in the past. We have 2 propositions in our city that actually originated out of this neighborhood that went on the ballot. We have a very strongly knit organization within that neighborhood, and I really don't think that you as an organization are going to really want to go up against that. If you really are interested, you can talk to the people who built the Ironwood Green Springs development and find out how it went for them when they tried to go up against this neighborhood. So it's just stuff to take back to the developers of this, your bosses, if you would. And so with that being said, we'd like to open up to you and provide any feedback or comments. Kevin had something else? No. Okay. Yeah, that was the whole intent. They said they wanted to hear from us first, and so turn the time to you now.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments. To talk to a few of the points, I'll keep this relatively short. This is more of a modern architectural look. The property directly to the west, just uphill from that, is zoned commercial. In that, on that property will go an office type product. We feel this is, and the developer feels this is actually a very good transition from that type of a commercial use down to a residential use. We've actually had a lot of positive feedback about the look of these units also. There's been some discussion about if the code, if there's some if it's not clear what is, going to the intent. And it sounds like certain people here have a clear idea of what the intent was in their head, but the code clearly says 0 slope, right? So I don't know if that gets misconstrued. 0 is 0, right? And we're not at that. As far as the variations in the roof, all of these units have steps in the roof line, right? So I think that we meet that other code also. Beyond that, parking has been talked about, and we meet the code. Appreciate the comments, positive feedback on the landscaping. I will pass that on to the landscape architecture. Beyond that, I don't think that I have anything more. Thank you.
When we are designing buildings, townhomes, commercial buildings, what have you, we make an effort to do our due diligence and research the codes. And to speak to you, Chris Porter, we weren't trying to find a loophole. This was just a look that the owner liked, and so we are pursuing it. The CCNR from the HOA, I was unaware of that. Could I get a copy of that?
We can obtain those away
HOA,
from here.
yeah.
It doesn't have.
Thank you. Is anything else? Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments from the council? Mhm.
So with the information that you've heard about the CCNRs, so with that being verified of not allowing the cube style of design, how would you go about furthering this project, working with the master HOA with that design?
We'll go back and let the developer know right away of this item that came up, and I'm sure there'll be some conversations with the HOA.
And be sure to include the HOA and not just the developer. So there are really two interests here. You have the financial benefit side and the homeowner's side. So you want to make sure that you're reaching out to the HOA and not just the architectural review committee or the developer.
Mr. Karn, right?
Yes, that's the HOA. He's president of the HOA board, but he has, I mean, there's meetings that they have on a regular basis that you'd be able to easily attend and voice your concerns and questions, and they would be able to take that as well as offline conversations. Any other comments or questions?
Just to staff, and I guess we need a couple other council members to weigh in on this, although I think they kind of touched on it. I would like to see at least have a discussion around making sure that CCNRs are part of our approval process, that compliance with CCNRs, because as I've said numerous times, I think that's where a lot of this should be dealt with, is at the HOA level and shouldn't be dealt with at the city level.
Right,
So
we shouldn't even be sitting
pushing
here
it to
today.
them.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree.
But, and to add to that, that's like the state coming in and telling
You
the
pull
city
up
what to do.
the code section.
Yeah.
On this, pull up the code section for the.
Put on the roof treatments.
Yeah.
Where the federal government telling the state.
So
So
one of,
I guess my question is are you asking us to then begin enforcing CCNRs?
No, we want to make sure that
But
we have a letter.
asking that they obtain a verification from the HOA that they comply with the CCNRs, just as part of the approval process. We're not enforcing them, that's the HOA's job to enforce their own CCNRs.
Other cities
However-
do this.
However, we need to make sure that, apparently, we need to make sure that the developers aren't approving their own projects in contravention of the CCNRs.
Yeah, I still.
I see
We'd like to
I see where you're
talk
going with
offline
that.
about this.
Yeah.
You were right, go back
We
one
have
page.
we could share some kind of horror stories that, in our experience.
That's the developers.
That
Right.
has not worked out well for us.
Okay.
Right, but there's architectural committee and then there's the HOA board, so.
Well,
They
but-
can't speak on behalf of the entire,
so
But to that point, and this is where it's really tricky, when a development is first started,
Right.
the declarant or the developer is the only person that's making those decisions. And so there's kind of.
but can we approve a project that is an open violation of a CCNR?
Yeah.
Can we open ourselves
Unfortunately,
up
we
to
can't.
That's a
other
dumb thing
problems
to
by
do.
doing that?
okay.
In most cases, then the
So-
declarant would be able to make the CCNRs
So-
match what they want to do, to
Yeah,
your point.
yes,
If they
that
control
point.
the board, they can change the CCNRs to do whatever they want. But at some point, that changes. And
And it
So-
sounds like they have some internal issues.
I think we should just have a discussion about it.
Sure.
So on this particular application, if I can get back to this one for a second, I don't think we, probably any of us want to deny this outright and make them start all over. That just doesn't seem right, because the site plan in and of itself is fine, and the other portions of it are fine. So if, I want to find out before I actually make a motion, if you guys are thinking if we could do a continuation instead of just a denial, because I don't think we want to actually deny it.
Well, I think a continuation is fair because then they're not having to pay all the fees again. And really, I think it was just a miscommunication between the various groups. So I'm in favor of doing a continuation.
I as well.
Well, that's a lot of votes, so.
Okay,
I'll entertain a motion.
okay.
Can you,
Yeah.
would you mind asking the applicant how they feel about it being, I guess what you're asking is to table it until,
I assume you don't want it
And have some
denied, that
conversation
you'd
with
rather have it
HOA.
tabled. I mean, we can deny it if you want it, that's just unusual.
Denying is just a lot more expensive for you.
And you have to go back to planning commission.
Yeah, you'd
And
have to-
public input.
That applicant has the option to actually request final action if you wish.
Yeah.
And in this case, it sounds like it would be denial. So the choice is yours whether to push a decision or not.
So Mayor and Council, just while they're kind of getting a moment here, if there's a final decision made that is a denial, then, you know, theoretically, they might have an appeals right or something like that where they could question that. So that may be something that they would want to consider.
Yeah, it is your choice. If you want to force us not to continue it, then you've gone through the process and we can. But if you start over, you have to literally start over. So we'll leave it up to you. If you want to take a minute to discuss, we can.
And starting over is starting over by going to
application fee, going to the planning commission, public input, all of it. You have to start completely over. It's a complete new application.
What is the other option?
Continuing, and then that way you can come back, work with the HOA,
Talk to the HOA and then come back.
and then you're just coming back to us, and then hopefully you're able to work through the cubism, the slopes, because for us, we have real concerns with the slope as well as the HOA. But the cubism, we don't, because that does meet our code, but it's got a conflict with the CCNR. So we would just hope that you would come back with a product that meets the CCNRs and our concerns that it meets 2A of our code under roof or roof treatments.
1916.
So we've told you what our intent was in 2A. And 2A is where it talks about slope roofs shall, not may, shall provide articulation and variation in order to break up the massiveness of the roof. Sloped roofs shall include eaves which are proportional to the roofs. So I think that we told you what our intents are. I know you have your opinion, but as the governing body, as the body here in Saratoga Springs, we've told you what our thoughts are. So I'm just leaving it up to you.
Can I add to something on that? 2C, it says flat roofs with zero pitch are not permitted, and then it means you default up to 2A.
Yeah.
So you don't have zero pitch, but now you're subject to 2A talking about sloped roofs.
Yep.
So it's not even intent there, it doesn't comply.
I think it actually doesn't comply as well, but we've had so much talk about intent, so I appreciate that. So again, we leave it to you. If you want to we can take a 2-minute break if you need to call somebody or talk, but this is, we can move to the next item.
The other items and then come back to you if you've had a chance to talk to somebody.
We can take a couple of minutes, that'd be all right.
Let's just take 2 minutes. Let's just take a 2-minute break.
One clarification, what is the appeal process?
We talked during the process.
Why would he even bring that? I'm pissed.
Thank you.
The appeal process is in 1903 in our code, chapter